What's up, you guys, and welcome back to another Sunday special, where in these videos what I do is I go through the markets with you guys and I share my fundamental and technical ideas for the week ahead. Now, last week was quite the week. We had NFP, which came out with some bullish news for the US dollar, which we're going to talk about a little bit more as we get into the video. But like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the market and we're going to look at technical and fundamental setups or ideas that I will be looking out for in the week ahead. Now, before I get too far, I'm going to show you guys some really cool stuff this week that I've been planning for you. So stay tuned. Make sure to like the video down below. And hey, if you're not already a member of our private community, make sure to check the link down below in the description if you want to see my trades in real time, as well as join our chat room, join our live webinars with some of our coaches inside of the group, and access all of that sort of good stuff. So check that out, and there's a promo code down there as well for you if you want to try us out. I am confident you will like it. Anyways, so we're gonna get into some charts today, and we're gonna go ahead and prep for the week ahead. Now, I want to show you guys something. Check this out. I put this together, and you can see I actually just got back from the gym, and that is exactly what I look like right there on the right. I look that handsome and that dashing today, but no kidding, I look terrible. But I just got back from the gym, so I figured I would show you guys this little thing I was working on. This is basically a tier list for the currency market, and I put this together. I've been thinking about doing this, and I finally got around to making this little visual for you guys. But basically what this shows you is my favorite pairs or currencies, more so, that I am looking to go long or short on. Now, this is in no way a definite thing, and this definitely can change throughout the weeks or even throughout the days. But the idea here is that this is going to give you a general idea of my opinions on my favorite currencies that I am looking to long or short. Now, if you are an avid watcher of the channel and you hang out in some of the live streams, then you know that one thing that I like to do is I usually like to go for trades that are long on strong currencies and short on weak currencies. Now, you can see that in my tier list here. Now, you might have a different one. You might agree or disagree. You can see that there are things up at the top there, like the British pound, the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, and the New Zealand dollar. Some of my pairs that or currencies that I am more interested in looking to go long on, whereas I've got things like the euro, the Japanese currency, as well as the Swiss franc there in the bottom, and the US dollar kind of in the middle. Now, if you heard maybe 2 weeks ago, I was much more short biased on that US dollar. And part of the reason that has kind of shifted is that we have seen a bit of some good news come out for the US dollar. Now, we saw, like I said, NFP last week, unemployment numbers came out better than expected, more jobs were created than expected, and unemployment dropped by more so than expected. So definitely some good numbers for the US dollar, and I think that with yields also rising in the US, that we could be in for some short-term bullishness on the US dollar. That out of the way, let's talk about some of that going forward here. Let's start with the Euro USD. Now, if you remember, quick glance back at the tier list, you can see that there's the Euro down at the bottom of the screen there in the C tier, as the flag indicates. And then you've got a little bit higher than that, you've got in the B tier, the US dollar. So when we jump over to something like the Euro USD, right? What that is talking about is we're looking at those two crossed against one another. Now, the reason that, like I said, I've been bullish overall on the US dollar recently. We've had a lot of good figures, and we've had some pretty good kind of buy the rumor, sell the news sort of situations going on. And you can see that a lot of rallies on the euro have actually been sold into against the US dollar. Now, this by no means means that, the euro dollar is just going to crash to nothing. But what it does mean is that, okay, this gives me a general bias to be more so on the short side of the Euro USD. And if you're watching this and you're like, wow, Nick, this is crazy, I've never even looked at the fundamentals, then you probably are not alone. A lot of traders who trade Forex, they hardly even look at the fundamentals. But to me, it's like, okay, if we're going to be trading currencies, I need to understand what I'm trading. It's kind of like if I buy a stock, I'm not just going to buy that stock because it has an inverted head and shoulders. I'm going to buy that stock because I like the stock and I think it has general value. So when we look at the Euro USD, for example, I think personally, this is my opinion. I'm not telling you what to do. This is not financial advice, but I think that there is opportunity to be selling the euro in favor of the US dollar still. And that doesn't mean I'm going to go sell right here. What that means is that I'm going to look for opportunities or pullbacks to try and get involved on the short side on the Euro USD. Now that this is not my favorite pair, we're going to talk a little bit more about some pairs that I might like a bit more. And of course, if I take any trades, I will share them inside of the group. But the idea, generally speaking, is looking to sell into major supply levels. Obviously, we have some major supply up here at 123.5 that we kind of marked out as our topping point before kind of coming down, right? But with the euro having a lot of issues, right? They've talked about having to go into more quantitative easing, as well as the US dollar being quite strong with unemployment numbers coming out good, as well as yields rising. These are all things that cause the US dollar to potentially look good against the euro, right? Especially considering the GDP of the euro is lagging compared to something like the US dollar and other countries. And then you also have, just generally a kind of a momentum shift here. We were in a very strong uptrend on the euro, and you may have remembered that if you were watching the channel during these times, I had some great long trades on the euro dollar. But now with momentum shifting, I think that things from a technical and fundamental perspective look pretty good to be a short seller in my opinion. Now, like I said, that does not, just because I have a fundamental bias to the downside doesn't mean I'm just going to short right here. I might look to see if there's retracements in the week, looking for a pullback, looking for those good technical setups on top of the fundamental bias is really where I personally find my edge in my swing trading. So for example, let's say that we did get a rally on the euro dollar going into this week, something like a push up to this previous level here. That could be an area of supply where I look to. I think that it is very possible that if we get a little bit more breakage of this 1.2 level, we really did make a good, impressive move last week, breaking through 1.2. If we can stay underneath there and form some sort of pullback there, I think that there's room to try and trade this thing down to the next major level of demand, which I see as the 1.65 level down here. Now, again, this is not financial advice, but this is my personal opinion. I'm looking mostly for short sells, short setups on the euro dollar. Let's move on. We'll take a look at something like GBPUSD is the next one. And quick glance back at the tier list, you guys, and we can see that for me, the GBP is a little bit higher than the US dollar. Again, this is my own research that I've done, reading through articles and looking at the numbers that are coming out from the fundamental sites like forexfactory.com. I have a general bias towards the long side on the pound. Now, one of the major reasons that I'll go into here is that when we pull up the pound dollar here, you can actually see that we've been in a very, very strong uptrend. One of the major catalysts for this movement to the upside on the pound dollar is the fact that the vaccination rollout in the UK has been perceived as pretty good by market participants. Now, whether you are a far-right conspiracy theorist or a far-left person, I don't really care, and the markets don't really care, because the markets don't care about your opinions, because we're not talking about the pandemic or any sort of whatever. We are talking about how markets perceive these things and what that could lead price to do. That is all we care about here on the channel. So when we're looking at something like pound dollar, and we see that, okay, a good vaccination rollout generally means that people are going to be able to get back out into the world, get back into business, get back into work, and that generally bodes well for the GDP of that economy. So that's why there's been this really strong increase, or at least one of the reasons why the pound has risen, right? Now, with that said, that story, right, the vaccination rollout, it is perceived to say that, okay, well, the pound should outperform the US dollar, or at least that's been the idea. So that to me still means that until that changes, until we get some sort of drastic shift in mindset there on the pound or in the UK, this generally speaking is more of a long biased pair for me. Now we're coming in close to an area that I really like, this 1.375 area. This is a previous level of resistance here on the 4-hour chart. And again, that's one of my favorite charts to look at, is the 4-hour and the daily chart. But you can see that generally speaking, we're in an uptrend, very, very strong here. And as we pull back to that level of support, I may be interested in looking for some long setups. Again, not financial advice. This is just my opinions. I think that the pound dollar has room to continue. And if it does continue, you've got some decent risk to reward here, in my opinion, because if we come here, right, let's say price shoots down to this level and for whatever reason, we get an entry there, right? If I get an entry there, the risk to reward is almost a 2.5, or it is a 2.5 to 1 if I were to put my stop underneath this structure. Now this, of course, I would have to look at in real time to see, you know, if there was any sort of groundbreaking news or anything that was changing. But for the most part, that would be a trade that perhaps I look at closer. Of course, if I end up taking any trades, I will share them with the private group in Discord. And for those of you guys who are in there, then you, of course, will see anything that I do. So pound dollar, that's generally my bias, is looking for long setups. If, of course, you are a bear on this, I think that, you know, you do have some general areas of supply that we formed last week as we kind of chopped around towards the end of the week. But overall, it was a pretty bearish move there. I think you have supply up here at 1.4. You also have supply at 1.42 at that previous high. Now, of course, if the fundamentals get going, the fundamentals can push right through levels of supply or demand. That's one thing to think about, right? If we get a major bullish push for the pound, it could break right through this, no problem. Right, and so that's why for me the fundamentals are important, is because the technicals come second to fundamentals for me. The general, you know, what the economy is looking like and the trends that are going on in the world, they are going to reflect in the markets. And I use technicals as more of a way to get in and out of the market with proper risk management and you know, some essence of timing there. Okay, so that's my thought. Let's keep going. We'll take a look at something like dollar yen. And this one, if you remember back on our tier chart, generally speaking, I am bullish on the dollar and bearish on the yen. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go buy up here. I mentioned on stream last week that I would love to be up in this trade right now. But alas, I am not. I didn't get long in this, although I would have loved to in hindsight. I was looking for the pullback here. Never really got it, and price ran away from us. So for me, there's nothing really to do here unless price comes down this week, unless we see some serious pullback. I really have no interest in chasing here or making any sort of quick judgment, quick moves. I think that that's a quick way to get caught if this price just came for a healthy pullback and you were buying the highs, right? Of course, that can be a dangerous game to try and play. Let's take a look at something like dollar CAD. Now, this one is a little bit of a mixed perspective for me here on the 4-hour chart, because I am generally bullish on the dollar and on the Canadian dollar. So when I have a bullish bias on both pairs, generally speaking, I don't have a strong directional bias. Although if I had to choose, I'd probably be looking more for sells in favor of that Canadian dollar, as indicated back on the tier chart at the beginning of the video. So for me, if price were to rally, for example, up to a point like this, maybe there's some sell trades, but really not my favorite pair. Generally, I like to trade something that is strong versus something that is weak. That is something that you'll oftentimes see me do. Not always, and sometimes I'll take range-bound plays, right? So if these pairs are both, or if these currencies are both strong, maybe you could play some range-bound stuff, just using the technicals or looking for something like that. Of course, that is one way to potentially play it. So a little hint for those of you guys who are in the premium community, that is kind of what I'm doing with the active trade that I have on right now. I'm going to hush up about that because that's for only premium members. But if you look at the current chart that I am trading, then you know that it is generally, for me, it's more of a range-bound play because it is two strong currencies, at least in my opinion. So that's dollar Canadian. Let's see if we can take a look at something else. We'll take a look at the Aussie dollar. Now, Aussie dollar is, again, this is sort of two pairs or two charts that I think are strong, or two currencies, excuse me, the Aussie and the US dollar. Both of these are generally strong. So you can kind of see, we've got this kind of back and forth here for the time being. Price made a high last week and really sold off at 0.8 and pulled back here. Now I think that there's probably some demand here at 0.76. And then we also formed some sort of supply here now at this level here. We can actually kind of just extend this out right here. That probably makes a little bit more sense to me going forward. Again, supply down. Obviously, some strong selling coming on at the 0.8 level here for the Australian dollar. So these are going to be some levels. I think that probably what will happen with the Australian dollar, at least in my view, is we are likely to enter into some sort of range-bound motion. Just because, again, these are both strong currencies at this time. Let me give you an example of an opposite currency pair. Euro yen. In my view, both of these currencies are ones that I am not a super fan of buying. So these would be both. This is a weak. We'll put EJ up here. This is a pair that I really have no interest in buying either one, right? So this would actually be a sell versus sell. So for me, not a huge one to be trading personally. If you like pure technicals, there's some great trend following stuff going on right here. Right, you've just got very, very clean structural plays. Move up, pull back, break out, pull back, move. If it were to break out again this week, maybe there's some breakout trades that could be in the works. Again, this is in kind of a strong momentum-based market right now. Here is Euro Yen, so definitely something to look out for if you like these sort of things. But for me, not a huge pair to be trading, or huge interest on a pair to be trading for me. And I think like the other ones, this one could also end up turning into sort of a back and forth market, if you will. Okay, let's move on to something else. What about pound yen? Pound yen, however, this gets interesting. Let's clean this chart. We're going to start fresh. So pound yen, this one also, like dollar yen, is just on a runaway train. And there's really no telling where this thing could go to. Again, you're talking about a risk on currency, GBP, versus a risk off currency. So people tend to sell this in times of optimism, and they buy this in times of optimism. Now, if things change around, if we see fear come into the market, if people are uncertain about global recovery, you're going to see this reverse almost certainly. Good chance that if bad news comes out for the world, or the process of recovery, you'll see this probably switch, where you'll see the pound get sold and the yen get bought. So if you are looking for a sell setup on that, if you think that pound yen is overstretched, I would personally stay out of the way of this thing, not looking to short this. A lot of people probably got burned on the way up here. In fact, there was a meme that we made on our meme page on Instagram @TraderFails about this currency pair itself, because it probably took a lot of people out on the way up who were just shorting into a strong economic fundamental move. But as we look at it, right, if there was a big catalyst to the downside, right, if there was a big change in sentiment, if the markets started to have a hiccup, if you will, then maybe there's some opportunities to look for a lower high and then looking for a pullback. But for me, until this is the case, I'm not interested in trying to short a strong economic trend. So with that said, for pound yen, is there any trade here? Well, for me, I just can't see myself forcing any trades up in this area. If price were to pull back to a longer term area of demand, but really I just don't see it happening, or at least I don't see myself being super interested in a pullback here, just because with this thing getting quite stretched, if things were to turn around, it could very quickly move very quickly back, right? A lot of times when you get these really crazy technical moves higher, they can be met with high volatility back the other way should things unfold, right? So I'm not going to short it. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm saying that I wouldn't take a long anywhere near this area either, just in case things shift. It could very quickly move back. So is there anything else I wanted to take a look at? I wanted to take a look at Aussie yen as well, just because this is a similar situation. We did pull back pretty sharply here last week with everything that sort of came onto the markets. We had a little bit of a scare in markets with yield rising quite substantially in the U.S. That was a little bit of a concern for markets as people moved off of or away from risk on currencies to risk off currencies and into things like the yen and the Swiss franc, which would make sense here, right? We got that pullback there. But then towards the end of the week, we sort of recovered that, and now here we are sort of chopping towards the end of the week. So if price were to pull back further here, if we were to see that, then to me, there is probably some good value in looking for buys around the 82 and even 80.5 areas. So those will be things that I am looking out for on this pair, because this would make sense again with my tier list where I've got the Australian currency and the New Zealand currency up at the top there, whereas the yen is at the bottom. So just some thoughts there on Aussie yen. Let's talk about gold, because I know everybody wants to see gold. We'll talk about this one. So gold kind of doing some weird stuff. Very, very sold off here this week. Here you can see on the 4-hour chart, just a lot of sell pressure in this entire move to the downside this entire week, really. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we had some very strong US dollar pushes. And again, on top of that, we had that yield percentage rising, which is usually a catalyst for people to be buying US dollars. And, you know, if you could get a bond, right, or you could get gold, and you generally have, you know, both of these are considered more risk-off, safe haven investments, right, or at least argued to be. If this is yielding higher, right, if you buy gold or you buy a bond, if you buy gold, it doesn't return anything, right? It doesn't pay you over time interest or anything like that. It either goes up in value or goes down. Whereas a bond pays positive value. It pays some sort of return. Even if it is small, it's something. And so if you had to choose one or the other, investors, you know, you might choose gold, you might choose a bond, but generally speaking, what seems to be happening is people are selling their gold and buying bonds, right? And again, because that yield rate increasing, it makes more sense to probably want to put money into something that yields something rather than gold, which just seems to be on a technical and fundamental push to the downside. Now, I don't think that this will go on forever. I think that gold probably has buying somewhere here. I'm not going to try and call the bottom, but it does seem like we're coming into a long-term area of support from a technical perspective. But again, the fundamentals don't care so much about technicals. Not that technicals are useless, but that, you know, if things continue to, if the yield rate or yield goes up drastically, this could very quickly break and we could even go lower, maybe back to 1500. It's very possible, right? So not going to say anything is impossible in markets for sure, but if we do get some sort of bearishness for the US dollar or something goes on here where we could see a little bit of a turnaround, then maybe I'll look to buy some gold in my more shorter term trading accounts. I actually, full disclosure, I'll just tell you guys this, I bought some gold long term this week around this area. This is not for my Forex trading or my short-term trading accounts, but for my longer-term portfolios. I ended up buying a little bit of gold because long-term, I think that it should do well, as it has done well for a very long time, and it's kind of a diversification thing in my portfolio. So just wanted to share that. But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Hey, if you enjoyed these videos, do me a favor, like the video down below. It does go a long way to help support the channel here, and it makes me more and more excited to do more of this content, knowing that a lot of people actually do enjoy it. If this video was helpful to you, like I said, subscribe to the channel for more, like the video down below. And if you want more content, if you want to trade more closely to myself and the rest of my team, check out the link down below in the description. There's a code there for you to get a promo code, especially if you made it to the end of the video here and you want to join our private community. You can hang out with myself and the rest of our team there. We do live webinars. You can see any trades that I take, join our chat rooms. There's some resources in there for us to use and to share. And we're actually adding a research section to the Discord as well soon, where our staff writers will be adding some more content for members. So very excited about that. And for those of you guys who are members, stay tuned for that. Very, very excited to release that. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. That's going to do it for the video. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and happy trading. Stay safe.